Spectacular Spider-Man, spectacular
Folks, welcome to Cartoon Insider, where we talk about animation, comics, and all things related to the industry that we love. Today, I couldn't be happier to be sitting with the creators who launched what many believe is the best Spider-Man cartoon ever made, the Spectacular Spider-Man. We have before us character designer extraordinaire, SEAN GALLOWAY, whose unique cartoony style helped design the look of the show. Also, we have the legendary Greg Weisman,
Hi, everyone.
the story architect who brought the success he had making Disney's Gargoyles to Sony's Spider-Man franchise. And last but not least, we have VIC COOK, the visionary producer who brought all the elements together and even directed a few episodes. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
Thanks
having
for
us.
having us.
So here we are almost 20 years later, or maybe 17. Greg, I remember hearing you say you wanted to make something modern yet still iconic that could stand the test of time and be looked back on as a classic. And I think you've achieved those goals. Greg, how much of the DNA of the Spectacular Spider-Man was in your original pitch that got you hired for the show?
Pretty much all of it. I mean, I couldn't have executed it without these guys, without you, without a lot of people. But, the basic pitch was high school Peter. We're not going to start with the origin. He's been Spider-Man over the summer, but up to this point, he's been stopping muggers, and he stopped one bank robbery and was really excited about that, but no supervillains. That the world was sort of like 1963 Marvel set in 2008. The Fantastic Four existed, but they're busy fighting big cosmic bad guys. Professor Xavier hasn't really gotten his school going yet.
Mm-hmm.
And, Captain America is still frozen in an iceberg, and Iron Man hasn't gone to Vietnam. I mean, Tony Stark hasn't gone to Vietnam or Afghanistan or wherever the hell he would go in 2008.
Right.
Don Blake hasn't found the stick that turns into the hammer of Thor, and Ant-Man was around, but no one had heard of him. He was off doing his little thing, and the Hulk was bouncing around the American Southwest somewhere, and was more like a myth or a legend, like Bigfoot or something like that. Like, there were people, obviously, in the government that knew for a fact that he existed, but they weren't publicizing that. So he was like a legend. If you took where Marvel was in 1963 when Amazing Fantasy 15 premiered, and you moved that to 2008, that was the state of the Marvel universe, more or less, in our minds there. And so one of the big things in the pitch that helped sell it, because there was all this fighting at Marvel at the time about Mary Jane and Gwen and all these different things and all these different girls. And I said, look, here's the deal. Peter Parker is madly, passionately in love with whatever girl happens to be standing in front of him at any given moment.
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot.
He's 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about hormones. It's not about anything else. And, and that'll change over time, but that's where we're starting with the character. He is not already specifically crushing on one girl or another. In fact, the first girl he's crushing on is Sally Averill, who we quickly find out is not the right girl for him. We find out within 5 minutes of the first episode. And if anything, the girl that we can probably tell is best suited for him in that first episode is Gwen, Gwen is such a good friend and been friends for so long, he doesn't hardly even notice her. The idea was to sort of go back to the feeling we got out of those early Lee Ditko and Lee Romita issues. So when I was growing up, when I was a kid, I was reading Lee Romita, seniors, right? The Lee Ditko stuff was old as I am, even that stuff was a little bit before my time. But of course, since then, I'd reread all that stuff. I knew all that stuff. But once I got the gig, which I think was in, I want to say December of 2007 or something like that. I went to the local comic book store, Golden Apple, and I bought all those black and white phone books, you know, that collected all the Treasury editions, that collected all those old comics. Like, I bought like 6 volumes, and my family was going with my in-laws to a dude ranch in Arizona, which is very much not my thing. But I brought all those books there, and I just started reading and taking notes, and came out of that trip with a 13 episode breakdown for the first season.
Right. It's taking all that original material and then updating it and mixing it in. Because
Right.
I did see in season 2 you had Silver Sable, you had some other characters that
Right. We were
that came
borrowing
in
from all
later.
sorts of different
Yeah.
eras.
Venom,
I mean,
of course.
even having Gwen
Yeah.
and Harry in high school,
Mhm.
it's not true to the comics, but what we
Mhm.
decided to do is sort of extrapolate backwards. We weren't showing the Gwen's, you know, Peter met Gwen and Harry and Mary Jane in his college years, but instead of sort of taking those college age characters and jamming them into high school bodies, the idea was, no, let's extrapolate backwards. What was Gwen Stacy like back in high school? What was Harry Osborn like back in high school? What was
Okay.
Mary Jane like back in high
Mhm.
school? We know what Peter was like, and I just tried
Yeah.
to capture what Stan did with Peter
Okay.
as much as possible.
Right.
You know, Flash and Liz, all those high school characters were there, but we brought in a bunch of other characters, and we decided to really weave stuff together. You know, the advantage we had was hindsight. Over, you know, in 2008, you had what, like 45 years of Spider-Man continuity, which means hundreds of writers and artists and editors have worked on the book, and some of it worked out great. But not all of it worked well together because, you know, different artists are making different choices, and so it doesn't all fit. Well, we had the benefit of hindsight. You know, if you know where Eddie Brock is going, it's, you know, when they're writing those stories, they're doing it as they go, but
Mm.
we had the advantage of being able to look back and say, okay, we know where Eddie Brock winds up. What can we do to make that make a little more sense maybe than
Right.
he did in the comics?
Yeah.
Or at least make it more integral to Peter's
Mhm.
life than it was in the comics. And
Right.
so my pitch was, this is about the education of Peter Parker.
Mm.
Um, whether it's in high school, at home with Aunt May, out in the field being Spider-Man, or out in the field being a photographer for J. Jonah. This was about Peter's education. He's the focus character. Everything revolves around Peter. That was sort of the mantra. And then what I did is I brought Vic aboard to partner with, because there's no way, obviously, I could do this alone, and nor did I want to. And so I punished Vic with this opportunity. Then Vic had worked with Sean, I think, on Hellboy. Is that right?
Okay.
And he brought Sean in, and yeah, and that was the idea. And what Sean brought to it from our point of view, I think, was that idea of it's contemporary but classic and iconic. And my goal wasn't
Mhm.
like, hey, I don't need it to specifically be use the costume from this era or this artist. It's just, when I see the Vulture, or when I
Mhm.
see J. Jonah Jameson, or when I see Aunt May, or any of these characters, whether they're heroes, villains, supporting characters, whatever, I just want to look at that character and have the audience go, I know who that is.
Yeah.
You know, when you see Flash Thompson, you don't want them going, wait, who is that supposed to be?
Right.
They know it's Flash.
Mhm.
And yeah, we had some more obscure characters down the road, I suppose, who they wouldn't be able to identify. But, you know, when you see Electro, I think Electro is one of the most brilliant designs that Sean did, because I always thought that mask that Electro wears in the comics is pretty goofy, with that star-shaped appendages poking out of the mask. But what
Mhm.
he did is he made that electricity, actual electricity, so it summons up your vision of Electro from the 60s or whatever, but it's completely contemporary and it's not ridiculously silly as a costume.
I'm not Max Dillon. I'm. What'd you call me?
Lightning Bud?
No, not that. Electro. Yeah. I'm Electro!
So, you know, that was the idea, is to keep it all feeling classic and, you know, with tremendous arrogance. What I said at the beginning is that we want this show to be to Spider-Man what Batman the Animated Series was to Batman. And we weren't trying to be Batman the Animated Series. If you looked at that series when it first came out, everyone was like, yes, this feels like Batman. And I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to do a show where when it came out, people would go, yes, this feels like Spider-Man. And I think that sort of stood the test of time.
So when the opportunity to work on Spider-Man came up, I was just thinking about the Spider-Mans that came before, and a lot of the superhero shows I've seen, animated ones, before, up until Batman the Animated Series. And usually it was to try to animate the look of a comic book drawing, like take those detailed drawings and animate it. And the thing is, the budgets just were never there.
Yeah, I would say X-Men the Animated Series of the 90s took more of that approach, where you could see like actual like texture lines and heavy blacks.
But almost every superhero show dating back to, you know,
true.
Superman, Batman hour, it's
Yeah.
real anatomy, real comic books. I mean, simplified a bit, but outside of what Alex Toth did, it was trying to do the comic books. And I'd say today, with CG and a bigger budget, you're able to pull it off. We've seen it on What If, right? But it just seems like in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, once it gets, the model sheets look great, but once it got animated, it was like a bit clunky.
Yeah.
And then the style of most of those shows, as far as like the backgrounds, is very realistic and kind of very painterly. You know, you mentioned Gargoyles, that's one of them. I think that was one of the best, but almost all of them were very painterly.
Yeah.
And what always stood out to me, I don't know if you ever noticed it, but like whenever there'd be a chase scene or people are driving a car and it's going side to side or three-quarter, the background's panning, it looks good. But as soon as it gets to a POV shot, it's a cell-shaded animated background, right? You could just see, it's just, to me, it was always jarring.
Yeah.
And when you got a little more recent history, they would start experimenting with CG, and it would still be jarring because then that CG wouldn't match.
Yeah, the Spider-Man animated series of the 90s. I guess that's another one I should have mentioned. But that was, I would say, that's a case in point for very early use of CG, where
So
all of a sudden,
I'm just, you know, there's a few ways to go. There's like that way you could do the approach, you know, which looks great, but it seemed like a lot of shows were doing the anime approach. So what can we do differently? And I just remember when I was younger, I liked that Space Ape video game. You know, it was kind of heroic proportions, but it had a lot of squash and stretch animation.
Are you talking about Space Ace?
Yeah. The
video
game.
Yeah.
Game. I mean, to me, it was very similar to like if you watched
that.
a Disney movie and you saw The Prince.
Yep.
Somebody with sort of superhero proportions, but it's animated with like squash and stretch. It wasn't stiff.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, you know, how are we going to execute this? What's it going to look like? How are we going to have backgrounds that no matter whether it's side to side or in perspective, it's all going to like look the same? And so I looked at the character stuff, those things, as that's a way to do it. And for the backgrounds, it's going to sound crazy, but it was like, I was just watching The Simpsons. And The Simpsons, the backgrounds are drawn like the characters, like outlines with minimal color shading. And whatever they were side to side or POV, it just looked like the same background.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. So that was what I thought how to do Spider-Man. I had just worked with Sean on Hellboy. And actually, strange situation, Sean had done all the designs and he was actually not there on staff by the time I came on. And I loved the backgrounds, and I heard that part of the process is they had another character designer sort of like work with Sean and kind of go over it. And then I found in a folder Sean's original designs before that happened, and I liked
Oh,
that way better. And I thought
oh,
that was
cool.
perfect for this sort of cartoonier, squash and stretch, simplified version of Spider-Man. Um, uh, and that's why I was like pushing Sean, because I'm like, okay, I like Space Ace, I like
Mhm.
the Disney movies, and I'm just imagining superheroes and supervillains with that kind of sensibility, and Sean just naturally that's his natural instinct, you know.
That's what, yeah, that was one of the things that was so great. It took a simpler approach, very graphic, but very smartly done. So it's just like, look at a Magnolia comic, it's a very simple, stripped down take, but it's still awesome. All the extra detail doesn't
It was very
necessarily
still
make it better.
challenging to pull off because most of the 2D overseas animation studios were used to working on, like you said, the 90s type superhero shows, the
Mhm.
pre-Bruce Timm style, and where it's not squash and stretch, and it's a little straighter and
Mhm.
stiffer,
Yeah,
and it's usually the studios that work on the funnier, cartoonier shows that do this.
yeah,
So it's like, how do we get that in our show? Because our show still had human proportions, it still had to be dramatic,
yeah.
but it was just getting that squash and stretch and the action, getting it in the facial things with like Jay Jonas yelling.
Hmm.
Another thing I loved as a kid, which I think we all loved, was like Speed Racer. So whenever Pop Racers
Yeah,
at speed, his mouth got really big, and
yeah.
so it's like it wouldn't work with a sort of a straight, realistic
Mhm.
character design.
It just made it more fun. I saw there was a Jay Jonah's one of his first appearances. He was like in the background at his desk yelling, and his head totally did that Speed Racer thing you were talking
Yeah,
about.
What do you know about selling papers? You're a kid. Worse, you're a teenager.
yeah.
I could totally see that
But it was
influence.
tough. We had
Yeah.
three. We tested a bunch of studios. We picked the best three. One
Mhm.
had just come off of Kim Possible, and
Okay.
it ended up being early on, in my opinion, the best in terms of what I was hoping it would look like.
Hmm.
But even on their first episode, it was like when I watched Act One and Two, I'm like, oh my God, they're not getting it. And then Act Three, they got it. It was almost like they were warming up in Act One and Two, and the Act Three was fantastic. And then their next full episode, which was Natural Selections, it was like, wow, they nailed the squash and stretch. And on, we to get, I'd worked with them, but we had to get a lot of people comfortable with them. So it was like, Sean,
Hmm.
take a crack. There's really no direction other than what Greg said. Let's make sure we still recognize it's these guys, but in your style.
Yeah.
So I think Sean, you can speak to this, but I remember, why don't you talk about the ones you initially did? Because that's to me what got you the job.
Yeah, so the ones I initially did was, I would say, more towards a Disney-esque type of proportions, where made his head a bit bigger than his body, made him even more timid than what we had seen in comics, with opposing his body. But he also initially gave him glasses because I was trying to go for the original type of look for Peter. But then once I got through the first wave, then Vic and Greg were allowed to give me more direction, saying that he's not that kind of kid in ours, if I'm remembering correctly, that he's more confident in this series, where
Yeah.
he's just learning about his confidence.
That's when we're developing Peter, but you initially did a set of characters, I remember.
Yeah.
You
So I
did
did.
you did Doc Ock, you did, and I think that's what everyone's like, okay, yeah, this is the guy.
Yeah. Jay Jonah was in
Yeah.
there as well. Doc Ock.
Jonah was definitely the character where I'm like about Sean's work, because
Mm.
uh, we all like Sean, but Marvel was making us audition multiple
Hmm.
designers,
Yeah.
um, and but when I saw Sean's Jonah, it's not that I didn't like Spider-Man and the villains and all that stuff, but when I saw Jonah, I'm like, this is it, because it just screamed Jonah to me,
Hmm.
and it was just so recognizable as that guy, so um, dead on Jonah Jameson, that I was like, this is the guy. At least
Almost all the ones he initially did, other than Peter. Peter was, because he's the lead, and he's kind of it's a newer, more modern take on the character. But all the other characters did not change that much.
Yeah.
What we got going.
Gwen
I
had the
think I did.
headband even. Yep.
Oh, for Gwen.
Yeah.
So I even did a Sandman, I believe, in the initial test, and the only thing we really changed was from his ska shorts to pants. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And Doc Ock wasn't much of a change either. So I was pretty shocked, to be honest.
Mhm.
But at that point, we were kind of locked in to all the characters had to match that. So there wasn't, I think, a ton of more explorations of how the characters were going to look. As those three were the ones that were leading the ship to, I guess, for everything to kind of, be molded by.
What
Does that-
I loved about Peter was that his little tag on his shirt was always up. That
I
was-
had this idea that if we'd gotten to season 5, which unfortunately we didn't, but at the very end of season 5, as they're heading toward graduation, that Gwen would reach over and tuck that
Ah.
tag in. In the last episode, just
Right.
before graduation, she would
Mhm.
tuck that tag.
That was very clever because, like, as
Mhm.
Sean mentioned early on, I'm not sure by who or what exec or whatever, but the glasses sort of got nixed out of the design, so the tag was just a neat, clever way to still say this guy's a nerd,
Right. But he couldn't quite be the bow tie with the glasses
Right,
introvert,
it
because he
wouldn't
had
work
to
in
have
2008, yeah.
he had to be like more of the jazzy John Romita Peter Parker with 3 beautiful women chasing after his affections.
Yeah.
So I can see why that had to change.
I have to say, though,
We did
one of
use
my-
the glasses, though, in the one flashback scene.
oh, yeah, that's right.
Uh,
Before
we-
he got to show
before
that.
that bit, yeah.
Mhm.
One thing you were mentioning, like, if you'd gotten to season 5, like, it seemed like I've heard you talk about why the season 3 couldn't happen because of the rights issue, and then going from Sony to Marvel, and it just wouldn't make sense for Marvel to have to pay Sony to continue the series. So I get all that, but at the very least, like, you set everything up so well. The train was running full steam ahead. I think, like a lot of fans, it's just like this feeling of like just wanting it to continue. Was there any talk at any point to continue this as a comic book series the way they did with the Batman and many other cartoons?
I mean, we pitched it. The thing you have to keep in mind is that Sony and Marvel, before Disney purchased Marvel, were sort of forced partners in stuff.
Alright. So it
Um,
was still that same issue. It's still, even as a comic, it would have been Marvel, Sony still.
yeah, I mean, in other words,
Uh,
Sean's designs were owned by Sony.
oh, okay.
And Sony couldn't use them because they didn't have the rights to do animated Spider-Man anymore.
Hmm.
Marvel couldn't use them either because Sony had those designs locked up. So Marvel could have licensed those designs from Sony, but you have to think about Marvel wanting to pay Sony to do Spider-Man, and just even if it never got even to the discussion of, well, how much money we're talking about, because just the notion of that
Yeah.
made the Marvel execs go, there's no fucking way we're going to pay for that. You know what I mean? And so it was never going to happen. And then on top of it, Disney bought Marvel, and that created even more complications. And, now I'm told, I don't know this personally, but I'm told that the relationship between Disney, Marvel, and Sony is better than it was back then.
No,
But
so
when
maybe
we
it
were
could still.
there,
So
Vic,
you're
you
saying
must
there's a
remember this.
chance. There's a
Marvel sued Sony
Hey, Vincent,
5 separate
there's always a
times
chance.
just over the 2-year run of our show.
chance.
Only one of those suits had anything to do with us, and it was pretty ridiculous. But just imagine that Marvel was filing a lawsuit on average every 4 or 5 months
Mm.
against Sony. They were not in a spirit of cooperation, even though they were both making a fortune off of Spider-Man, they were mad at each other all the time.
I mean, kids loved it. It's their Spider-Man, and now they're adults, and they've
Right.
signed petitions numbering in the tens of thousands, begging
We had
powers that be to
episodes.
bring it back.
We had episodes in second season where they were signed off on by Kids WB execs.
Mm.
But then by the time they're animated, they have to clear Disney execs, and so some of the things that were okay before we had to do workarounds.
Oh, like what kind of things?
We had a second season show. It was Flash Thompson's birthday. I'll just give you one simple example. I mean,
Yeah.
we know about fighting, right? In fight scenes, you've done so many, and
Yeah.
back in the day with Batman, you couldn't punch somebody in the face, so they'd find clever ways around it. On the
Mhm.
Spectacular Spider-Man, if the person on the receiving end of being punched had superpowers, we could do it,
Oh, uh-huh.
But this is not about a fight scene. This is Flash Thompson and about how he got his name, and basically, it comes out it's because when he was little, he ran around naked. He was flat.
Oh, I remember seeing
Flat.
that
And there was a
photo.
photo of him as a toddler.
Yeah.
Back view, you see his butt crack running, and the design got approved, the color got approved, storyboard got approved. It's all approved, right?
Mhm.
Because he's like, you can't do that. You got to put shorts on him. You got to put a bathing suit. You can't put that on him. That otherwise he's not flashing.
Mm.
And we were
flower base,
just
right?
throwing desks over at the office. We were so upset. And then our associate producer of all people said, hey, have you seen Austin Powers? Just put like a flower just right there in front of the.
Who do you think gave Eugene his nickname? And hey, it wasn't because he ran fast.
That's how.
That's how you
But
do
it
it.
was like, so it was just like, wow, we got approved here, and now we're it's a different studio, different standards,
All
Well,
right, with that,
I'll tell you what,
okay.
when I initially designed Spider-Man, we kept fighting that we want him to stay slender to look like a kid.
Mm.
But then Mike made a very good suggestion. They said, you know what? Trick him. He said, lift his shoulders up, make it look like he's standing up tall, and look like he was stronger, and it got approved. It was basically the same design, but it got approved because he was standing at a more superhero pose for that moment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he had very good ideas. Yeah.
I mean, this show's called Animation Insider, right? I mean, the
Cartoon Insider.
Cartoon Insider. It's just like everything was a battle.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I'm
Spider-Man's
well familiar with much of that.
Spider-Man's physique. We'd have toy guys come over and say our market research says 6-year-old kids like He-Man, Masters of the Universe type body shape. It's like, so you put school clothes on that body shape, walking around campus. How is that person called Puny Parker anymore?
Right. Speaking to your restrictions, something that it made me think. I'm dying to know if it had, because you set it up by the end of the season 2, you had the whole Gwen, Captain Stacy, Green Goblin. Any fans of a comic book know where that's going to lead, and the most like probably maybe the single most iconic issue of Spider-Man ever, and that is the death of Gwen Stacy. How are you guys planning on handling that?
Well, the initial game plan, which of course didn't happen, was that we were going to do 5 seasons in high school, and in between seasons, also we would do these 4 or 5 episode arcs that we would then collect into a movie, and with additional footage.
Oh.
And we did that for the very first 4 episodes, or 3. Was it 3 episodes or 4, Vic?
The lizard.
Every 3 episodes.
Yeah, 3 or 4. It was 3 or 4.
I think we only released one
that way. Yeah,
that way.
very
Attack of the Lizard one, right? I saw it.
And Marvel knew that was the plan, and I'm not saying they approved of it, but they never objected to it. They waited until that first video was released, and then they sued Sony about it. Because there was new footage in it. And they were like, you can't do that. You can't re-edit. You can't put in new footage. You haven't paid us for that. So we're suing you. But they knew that was the plan. They just waited until they had an example of wrongdoing. Now, I'm free to say this because everyone who was there is gone now. They're not the people who we were dealing with. They're not there anymore. So, otherwise I'd be worried about never working for Marvel again.
Right.
Not that I am working for Marvel now, but yeah, that group was like waiting to pounce. So we were never able to do that again. But the plan was in between each season, initially we'd do a direct to DVD movie. And that went away. So like we had plans for a spring break movie where the kids went down to Florida and faced the lizard in the swamps and stuff like that. And then the idea was that after 5 seasons that covered Peter's junior and senior year of high school, which would have given us 65 episodes, and 65 episodes, if your viewers don't know, is that was the standard animation syndication package, 65 episodes. Then the idea was that for the college years, we would do those as a series of direct-to-DVD movies. I'm not going to reveal whether or not we would have killed Gwen or not, but what I will say is that we weren't going to kill Gwen during high school. That's not when Gwen died.
Right.
But we were planning to go forward and cover his college years in movies. After we'd done 65 episodes across 5 13-episode seasons. And again, the idea was in episode 65, the gang all graduates high school. Gwen tucks that little tag back into Peter's collar, and and they're going off to college.
I wish it would have happened because our show,
me too.
he still didn't finish his sophomore year, so this would have been a really big year for us if we had done this.
No, I agree. We got from September of his junior year through like March or April. That is right up to where spring break, where we would have done that Florida movie. Spider-Man, spring break, Spider-Man Gone Wild. We got right up to there, and then we didn't get a pickup for season 3. And we were waiting for one for a while because, again, the show had been a big hit. In those days, we thought, oh, we're definitely going to get a pickup, and then it just didn't come, and it didn't come, and then it didn't come, and then Disney bought Marvel, and then Marvel got the rights to do animated Spider-Man back from Sony in some deal that had nothing to do with us, but everything to do with the live-action movies. Sony wanted some concession from Marvel on the live-action, billion-dollar films they were making, and in trade, they gave Marvel back the rights to do animated Spider-Man, and that created the sort of no-win situation where Sony couldn't do Spectacular and Marvel couldn't do Spectacular. And I think at that point also the executives at Marvel were like, we can do a better job than those Sony people. So they decided to do Ultimate.
Yeah.
And they were kind of, I want to say, Vic, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like they sort of made the two of us at least really persona non grata at Marvel just to prove a point.
Yeah. I've heard some of that's kind of where
I've heard of that, Greg. Now my feelings are really hurt.
That cannot be the first time you've heard of that. I don't believe you. You're lying. I know.
That's why they wouldn't answer the door when I showed up. That's good.
Yeah. So one of the other things I think that's worth mentioning is just the stacked level of talent you guys had on pre-production and also voice acting.
Adam, I'll let Greg talk about the voice acting, but I just want to just let you know this was a culture shock for me because I've been at Disney for 16 years, and your storyboard artists, everyone's on staff. Everyone is right there.
Right.
The directors go through post with you, at least through retakes, So this show was the budget was so small.
Yeah.
And the turnaround time so tight. And the show was, 1/3 of each episode had a staff storyboard artist, only 1/3. So the other 2 acts had to be freelanced.
Yeah.
And
that's where I came in.
And there was only a handful of people handle an act, right? You would never really, if somebody was working someplace else, you kind of didn't want to give them a full act because what energy can they put into a full act working after work? So challenging. But you're right, and it for the storyboard artist. And you tell me if you felt this way or not. But it was demanding because
Oh yeah.
one of the other things, I talked about like design stuff and squash and stretch, but the other thing I wanted to see in the show was some, when you watch a Indiana Jones or a superhero movie, there are set pieces, there are long action sequences with music behind it, but it seemed like in sort of 60s, 70s, 80s superhero cartoons, it's barely there. It's a radio show with some punching here and there, but there's no sequence. And so I wanted us to have 1, 2, sometimes 3-minute sequences if we could. And so that's a lot on the board guys who happen to get those sequences.
Yeah. Well, I was happy to get the chance, and there's no way I was going to say no. I was still directing, or at least in the later stages of directing on the Batman, when Dave Bullock called and said, "Hey, do you want to work on this Spider-Man show?" And I had started my career as a revisionist, working on the '90s Spider-Man show, kind of shadowing for Rick Holberg, who was kind of a in-demand storyboard artist from that era. So yeah, there was no way I was going to say no.
And I remember your sequence because that was a prime example of we're not going to give a full act, but you got a chunk that we thought, hey, and the time we have and the time he has after work, he can do a really good job. And I remember there's a few. So I consider you like a guest star, guest stars that I would meet, and it's like, oh wow, I let you. There was some backhanding fights around the glider fighting. It was like pretty awesome.
Oh,
Were you in your office?
That was the uncertainty principle. I think it was the Halloween episode, which was one of my favorites. And
cool.
Where you been, Greenie? Vacation? Been looking for you.
And that also for your boards, but also Adam Benwick.
Oh yeah, great.
Act 3. And then
your guy, it's your actor
Ho,
right there.
the Kim Possible animators animated that episode. So all that
cool.
with all the high schoolers in their costumes and Flash Thompson and the guys in cheerleader outfits. I mean, all that stuff came off pretty humorously and well animated. So yeah, all of that came together. But yeah, I think I think the animation industry was in a little bit of a downturn at that time too. I think. You remember that at all? This was like
not compared to now, but
not compared to now. Now it's dead. I think it was a lull, and so there was suddenly you see, we had a little window of these super top guys.
Joaquin Dos Santos. I saw his.
We got him for 2 episodes.
I saw. I could totally spot him out. I know he must have been involved with that Secret Six fight. At least I suspect.
Fight in the
Sinister
Park.
Six. In the park. There was that shot where it's real close on Dr. Oct, and then he animates out away from camera. I suspect that was a Joaquin Dos Santos shot, because we both got leaned on anime.
And he did the season 13 Venom Act 3 fight.
Awesome.
Ryu,
that's another name that popped up.
What was that?
Ryu, another.
Ryu was on staff. Ryu was
he was really talented. He's producing, been producing shows last 2 years.
He was on staff.
Who?
What was that?
Sahan.
Oh, Sahan, yeah.
Sahin. So Sahin was another one like Adam who would do freelance a full act. Like I said, most freelancers would do maybe half an act, but I noticed him also on Hellboy. He worked on the other Hellboy DVD.
Oh, okay.
It was like just showing me his animatic one day, and like, oh my god, it's like this secret. Who is this guy? And so clever, and he really helped. When I came in to meet for the show, they're asking all these questions about how I see it looking, and I told you on at least the character design and animation front what I thought, but I just thought, I was a big fan of like Hong Kong movies, these Hong Kong movies and that choreography, not necessarily martial arts, but just that they're using the environment and stuff.
Yeah.
And now when you watch a Spider-Man live action movie, he's using that web, he's webbing at something and throwing it. It's like they're doing it all now, but it seemed like before that time, I in the cartoons, he just sort of swang on his web, or he made a web and to catch cars, but didn't really do stuff. So so it's like, want to bring that to it. And the promo, Greg and I needed to do a promo for Comic-Con, this rooftop promo. And so I thumbnailed like a few things and talked out some of these Hong Kong things, and Sahin just seemed to naturally know that he'd bring stuff to it that we didn't talk about that would help him achieve some of this choreography, He would he was, I think, one of the only board guys who would like in SketchUp build a background for him so he could like have it all these different angles, wouldn't have to redraw it.
Even back then.
He's amazing. Sean, is there anybody else I'm forgetting?
Well, Joaquin, I was trying to mention earlier, our Gwen Stacy, I was really inspired by what he did for his test. His Gwen Stacy was just so solid that we went with that. But yeah, I have to say, Ryu, gosh, his football, the football choreography he was doing was just insane. Those camera angles.
Yeah.
It'd be neat too, Vinton. Do you have any of your boards that you can flash on here at all?
Sure. I wish I did. That was back when we were still drawing on paper. And I think to be honest, I mean, directing and boarding on top of that, I was like doing a lot of crazy late nights to get everything done. And I think at the end I was just like, here you go. And I didn't even make a
we
copy of
were
it.
happy to get your sequence. Other artists like you who was sort of like a guest star kind of came in and did, I think you did one or two, was when we did our Molten Man episode. I think Molten Man was second season, right, Greg?
Yeah.
And I remember looking, and I didn't know him before. Is it this guy? Have I even said his name yet? It's Alan Caldwell.
Oh, Alan, yeah.
And I just thought, wow, this is just a pretty amazing fight scene in this. I think it was in a pool hall or pool,
cool.
So anyway, I don't want anyone to think I'm
episodic directors like Jennifer Coyle. And,
Jennifer.
Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, she went on to, of course, produce Harley, and hired me as a director on that for like 4 seasons.
We not everybody from the first season went to second season, so we had so Kevin Altieri over for Dave Bullock.
Right, and Kevin Altieri was from the Batman series, the Bruce Timm Batman series.
And he's always, finding ways to, add to the story that's there, add fun and interesting ways to add to the story there. But whoever's watching this, please look on IMBD. The whole crew is fantastic. So we're name dropping some, but everybody was great.
There's a lot. One thing, I mean, this seems like maybe an okay to mention. Like when I did come in the few times to the studio, I was a little maybe shocked is too strong of a word, but the buildings that you guys worked in, like I worked in, like the past few years I worked for the WB. Was working on the ranch, which was pretty nice, and there's had a bunch of sets there. And then the new one is this huge glass building.
We were in a warehouse where they had built out second floor, but a warehouse where you store props and costumes for Sony, which is what the whole first floor of this building was. No one puts windows in a warehouse so that the props can look outside.
Yeah.
So then you put people in quote unquote offices on the second floor, infested with gnats. When I first started there were gnats everywhere. It was like frightening. And no windows at all. I mean, none. And that's where they stuck us because
Yeah.
And then if you wanted to go outside for a break, you hear.
Yeah, it was right next to the
there.
overpass.
Yeah,
And
total culture
homeless
shock.
people, right, living underneath the
Total. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're
Like I said, I was.
Yeah.
You were at a nice studio at Warner Bros. I was at a nice studio. It's like, what is going on here at this place?
Who was the lady that would we'd have to ask permission for a lamp or a stapler? What was her name?
yeah,
remember?
I can
I think I know.
picture. Is it Diane or Dana or not
I
I
Diane?
think
know who you're talking
Your
about.
pencil nub still has some left. Come on.
Yeah, so I'll give you a pretty funny story. Because there's no windows, I had to have my desk lamp on and the one behind me just so I wouldn't feel depressed sitting in my office, right? She'd come in there, she goes, "You don't need this lamp on behind you." She would turn it off
Oh
and
my
leave.
God. I have a similar story because I think this is the same woman. She carried through from the earlier days at Sony because I went from Sony's to
Tony, head of post production. She was Tony's wife. I forget her name.
yes, that's
Yeah,
it.
that's right. It was
There were we we had a nickname for her. I will not repeat.
I don't know.
But
Back
she
to
did
Spider-Man.
she did a thing with me where in the snack room she was always doing stuff like that. Like in the snack room, it was in another warehouse in another part of Culver City, and that's where I worked on shows like Jackie Chan and the Godzilla cartoon back in the day. And the door, there was this heavy metal door that went to the snack room, and the thing is it didn't work properly, so you had to prop it open to get your candy because if it closed, you were locked inside. And I had propped it open and I was in there getting candy, and she was like, just like she does, turning off lights, whatever. She just saw the door open. She like just kicked the thing out and just let it shut.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but she was always like, just like you said, she was always
And on
like
top of it, I'm
counting every
sure.
post-it, every pencil. That was Sony
Yeah,
back in the day.
It was grueling. And also being in Culver City,
Yeah,
when most people are used to driving into Burbank, and so they, not everybody lived by Burbank, but most people planned where they lived to be somewhat of maybe a 30-minute commute at most to,
right.
to Burbank. And now we're driving in Culver City
All that
on
congestion.
top of all this tight schedule,
Yeah.
no windows.
Yeah.
Everyone's a freelancer, it seems like. Yeah.
And then the building you guys were in at least had like a big kind of gate fence around it, right? Didn't it? That's
It
what I
was
remember.
like bars. It was like a prison bars.
Right, but at least it was secure because this warehouse that we were in before was not didn't have any gate around it, and if you wanted to, people would walk down the block to go to the convenience store or whatever. And I remember one of the guys that was working with us at the time, Tom, was it Tom? I don't want to get the name wrong, but he was mugged at gunpoint while he went out to the.
I didn't walk anywhere. When I left,
Yeah,
I would get in my car to drive someplace. I've never walked.
no,
Yeah, because food was close by.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you just had a crappy vending machine that would lock you inside a room if you weren't careful.
I remember the first month and a half. I was driving up from San Diego and staying up during the week on somebody's couch for a little while, and didn't go back down to San Diego before I had stayed at Vic's house. And so the first month and a half, I leave work, and I'm thinking I'm going to free sketch in the hotel room. I would be so zonked out. I'd close my eyes. I wouldn't wake up to the next morning, so I would miss on dinner. I'd wake up, go grab McDonald's, bring it to breakfast for the crew. But I was just so exhausted for a month and a half. I never worked that hard in my life. My brain power was never depleted like that. But after a month and a half, I had to force myself to stay up just to kind of get past it. And I did eventually, but I just never experienced anything like that.
It was.
We were all working really.
It was. When I was at Disney, like say a show like Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, it's like you have all these non-speaking part space rangers that are just in the hallways in the background. That's you got to fill out the stuff. It's not just your stars, and so that wasn't part of the normal. When we're okay, now we start our episode 1. That stuff was, we called it the 999 pack, I think, and it was just part of like the pre-development of before you start your designs on episode 1. On Spider-Man, have that, and so episode 1 starts, and it's not just this design who the guest star villain is that week. It's like it's New York City. It's
Hmm.
all these students in the hallway. You can't just have our stars in the hallway and nobody else. So yeah, I mean, I'm. It doesn't surprise me. Sean was so tired because he had to do it all. He had to do the 3/4 front views of like everybody.
I had an office with 2 doors, and if you wanted to get to the back of the building, you either had to walk all the way around, or you had to walk through my office.
Oh, really?
And I was up so late working every night that we had a chart at one point where it listed how many hours of sleep I had gotten the night before. I want to say Gary Mariano put that chart up or something. And so every morning, I was supposed to write down how many hours of sleep I had gotten the night before. And it was like 3 or 4.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
6 was like this wonderful night when I had gotten 6 hours. But I was napping. I was taking naps during the lunch hour break. But I couldn't lock my doors because people needed to be able to cross through to get to the offices in the back. Because again, this place wasn't designed to be a suite of offices. It was they just built them up in this completely random fashion. So I would be on the couch asleep with the lights turned off, but people were constantly like walking through my office. And that went on whether I was working or asleep or whatever. Just constant traffic through my office because there was no better way to get to the other side of the building unless you wanted to walk.
Yeah,
Oh,
some of the younger people like I encounter working because I'm still fairly active. I just finished up a show less than a month ago at Warner Brothers. In contrast to that, it's big, beautiful twin glass buildings, and there's like a full food court down at the bottom. It's all fully secured. It's got a mezzanine it's like between the 2 towers. That's like a little mini park with park benches, and it's all landscaped. And I would say honestly, like the hours are a little bit more. Like, I don't know if there's been just more crackdown or, this is all through the union, but it seems like it's not quite as bad as it was.
I think the Spider-Man thing to
Yeah.
me is the anomaly. I
Yeah.
think describing is the more normal. Even when I was at Disney and even when I was at Warner Brothers, like you would have a late night sometimes.
Right.
On Spectacular Spider-Man, there was a middle 6 or 8 months where it's like I had dinner there with 4 or 5 people who were also working late, at least
Yeah.
Monday through Thursday. We're just working till 10, 11 o'clock at night. That's
I
not
yeah. I
that's
would
not
say it was
normal.
like that for me
point
That's
for
where
that
not
whole
we were
decade.
still doing
Yeah.
writing, we were doing pre-production.
Yeah.
Now episodes were starting to come back and we were posting at the same time. And so, Vic and I would be down with Bruce King or with one of the other editors, and we'd be there till midnight or 2 a.m. Jennifer Anderson going and getting us Thai food and bringing it in, and it just the schedule was so tight.
Yeah. I mean,
we
for
were-
example, when I was at Warner's on Scooby, of course, we'd have first and second season crossover. It was never nothing. It wasn't like that.
I feel like that whole decade, like, it's like the expectations were more like the 90s, the Batman, X-Men, Gargoyles, Spider-Man. They sort of upped the ante and the expectations, and then us coming in after that, the expectations went up even more, bringing in more anime influences, more ambitious storytelling and
I
shots.
don't know about like the whole industry. It just seemed like, I mean, I think I know this. It's like this show, they borrowed a budget from some preschool show and said,
Yeah.
we do Spider-Man for that.
They were doing that, like on the
And that's when they
Avengers.
said, okay, and then you're sort of
Yeah,
stuck with
that's
these
just what they were
comedy-
doing. They
Yeah.
thought because they thought it could be done. They thought these new ambitious shows, like on the Avengers, they were like, yeah, a 3-week schedule that worked for some whatever preschool show. So we had 3-week board schedules. So in that case, we had the staff, but we had like a totally unsustainable schedule. But my question for you is, despite all that during this time period, and I know how I kind of feel about it, do you look back on it from now with nostalgia? Do you miss it in a way?
No, not the working
No?
conditions. No. I
I
mean,
have
I'm so happy with how the show turned out,
Mhm.
and to me, working with these guys and the crew, it's almost more like it was our version of Band of Brothers in World War II. That's how I
Yeah.
look at it, because it
Mhm.
just seemed like everything was a battle. Everything we
Yeah.
wanted to do, I mean, just every little thing, that people love about the show, the fans love about the show. There was always some little roadblock that we had to get past
Mhm.
to get it. You
Right.
know,
I'll tell you one thing though. One thing that I miss that we don't really seem to have certainly post COVID is, and I think that's something I mean, I wasn't there as a director or anything, but I'm assuming you had full cast records. Man, do I miss those. I miss seeing everybody in there together, interacting with one another, and and now it seems like everyone's at home recording it from there, and
they're starting to come back. The show
oh,
I'm
are they?
on, I'd say this past year, I'd say half of them have come back,
Oh, that's cool. That's
yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
And
Um,
3 of our 4 leads will be in the booth at the same time together.
oh, that's good.
But I mean,
And
it's I would say this is the year that kind of started happening.
okay, yeah, and and then there is, I think, a little bit more of a move to get people back into the studios too. Like I was on a hybrid situation at Warner Brothers, so which is actually, when you think about it, the best of both worlds, where you just have to come in 3 times a week, and you can work the other couple days at home. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
But this, we're gonna have to wrap it up here pretty quick. I did want to, I started to mention, so I did want to touch upon some of the great voice cast that you guys had. Josh Keaton, of course, is the heart of the show. He was just made to play Spider-Man. So great. Kevin Michael Richardson, just a guy who's like I've worked with both these guys on multiple shows. They're like industry standards. He did a fantastic job as the Joker on the Batman, and then he played Tombstone for you guys.
Yeah, except in the first episode. That was
Right.
David, but then
Yeah.
over. Darren Norris was amazing as J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh
He
yeah.
was Darren these long, apoplectic speeches. I don't get this in 3.5 seconds.
Mhm.
Heads are rolling or something, and Darren would just nail it. Vanessa Marshall, Lacey Chabert, Lana Ubach, Ray Delisle, Ray Griffin now. Just phenomenal. And then these great guest stars who would come in to play our villains.
Mhm.
Alan Rachin's coming in to play Norman Osborn. James Arnold Taylor's Harry Osborn. And then we had
Steve Blum.
Peter
Didn't Steve
McNichol as
Steve Blum?
Doc Ock, and
Yes,
Okay.
Goblin.
Steve Bloom as
Right, Green Goblin.
Green Goblin.
And then Freddy Krueger was in there as the
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
Vulture.
Vulture.
sure.
That's awesome.
And then we had one of our guys from staff, Eric, do Craven's voice.
Eric Vesbit did
Oh,
Craven's voice, and
alright.
it was fantastic.
And let's not forget Greg Weisman.
That's
Playing-
oh yeah.
playing a
That's the
character.
voice of Donald Mencken,
Yeah.
Norman Osborn's aide de camp.
And Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, there was no ADR on this show, right?
No, we had no budget for it.
That's amazing.
Mm.
You
We had
know?
no, but because I wanted to have a big cast.
Mhm.
I know that's shocking, the Greg Weisman show with a big cast, but
Young
I
Justice.
wanted to have a big cast, so we were going to spend all that money up front. So what we did is we create Walla libraries
Mhm.
for every character. So stuff that you usually ADR, like punches and whatever, we had libraries of our characters getting punched or saying each other's names. So if you needed someone to call out, Mary Jane would record the names of almost every other character in the cast, so that if we needed her to call out Peter or Flash or Mr. Jameson, Aunt May, we had her saying it quietly, Aunt May, saying it medium, Aunt May, saying it loud, Aunt May, that kind of thing. So we would do all that and any other things we could think of, because we had no budget for ADR at all. Zero.
Had to cover your bases.
It's like I think this is the only show, that was the only show I've ever worked on where, because there was no ADR budget, it's like you stayed with your choice of line. I mean,
that's what we did the same trick on YJ too, because
it worked. I never felt like there were lines watching it where it was like, oh man, that was bad.
I mean, we had Jamie Thomason directing, and
good director.
He did a terrific job. He's casting director and voice director, and those sessions were a lot of fun. We had Clancy Brown playing both Rhino, who was so funny, and George Stacy, just phenomenal group of actors from top to bottom playing supporting characters. Andrew Cascino and so many great people now who I'm friends with, but who back then I was like, I didn't know Josh Keaton before we started. When casting started, when we had to cast the show, Marvel was insisting initially they wanted 10 choices for each major role, and they considered major roles, like there were like 10 or something roles that they considered major, including Eddie Brock / Venom, and who's Ben Diskin ultimately, and Aunt May, who was Deborah Strang, and Gwen, and Mary Jane, and Peter, Spider-Man, and Green Goblin, Harry Osborn and Norman Osborn, J. Jonah Jameson. I mean, just this huge list of characters, and they wanted it times 10. 10 options for each. And we talked them down to 5. And then before we went into the big meeting with Sony and Marvel for final casting, because they wouldn't let us make the final choices, Jamie Thomason and Vic and I sat down and went through, and the three of us had tremendous agreement about who we wanted. So I went into that big meeting with Sony and Marvel totally ready to fight, like, okay, I got to fight for this. And so we sat down and they're like, okay, so who do you want to play Peter Parker Spider-Man? And I almost literally was like, Josh Keaton, totally ready to fight. And then the response was, oh yeah, Josh was our first choice too. And I'm like, no, lit. Oh, okay. And who do you want to play Mary Jane? Vanessa Marshall. Yeah, we picked Vanessa Marshall too. And it was like there was no fight, because the people who ultimately won those roles were all such standouts in those roles that it was the only time, and Vic, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the only time we didn't have a battle on that show. Suddenly everyone was like on the same page, and we'd had to fight for so many other things.
I feel like there was only one other thing that I feel like we were in sync with, and that was the actors and the song, the main title song.
Oh yeah, we all love that main title song.
It's catchy. It's very catchy. Yeah. So I guess at the end of the day, like many great shows, great movies that you hear about, it really was a down in the trenches, stressful, long hours, but also it was really one of those somewhat rare things I think that happens in these types of art forms, where all the different elements just really came together, with Sean and his character designings, Vic, your whole vision for it. Vince Toyama, yeah, right.
Sort of took what Sean did and translated it into.
I gotta say,
what did you say?
Big props to all the artists that were a part of the team. They took my designs that I consider as like I can't look at anymore kind of designs, where they took it to another level. Like I think that's why I really loved the Sandman and the Rhino one, because they were pushing it in a way that I would love to have known how to have done it, but they did it, and that's what made it, I think, really, really a really nice
Mm, right.
collaboration.
I know we're running short on time here, but I did want to be like, that kind of made me think of favorite episode. Any, like, do you have a favorite episode, couple of favorites? Or
Yeah,
I'll,
episode
I'll
5
go
and 6
last.
for me. Yeah,
which one?
I said I'm going to go last.
Okay, which one was yours, Sean?
the when Sandman became Sandman, and then when Rhino became Rhino. So those two are my favorite, just because the animation and how the storyboarders and the other character designers really pushed and made these characters really come to life.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Greg?
I mean, I really love all 26, like a father loves all his children kind of thing. But I will say that the fight in the park with the first Sinister Six episode
Mm-hmm.
is so badass that's definitely one of my favorites. But I also really love the second to last episode with all the we're cutting between the prison and the high school play of Midsummer
I
Night's
love
Dream,
that.
and I just love how the
Yeah.
dialogue plays off each other and the action, and I love the design that
Mhm.
Sean did on the kids in costumes that also reflected, like we had a puck
Mhm.
um, who looked like Kobe playing the Green Goblin, you know, and Glory playing Cobweb looked like, you know, a sort of female Spider-Man. The idea was that the guy who was directing the play and was like, "Hey, we'll make it Shakespeare work for contemporary kids by using these superheroes and villains who are out around New York that they're familiar with, you know, kind of thing." And I just loved how that played. And then I just really loved our 26th episode, our last episode, which I just thought has this huge revelation from Norman Osborn and Green Goblin and it just Kevin Hops, I think, wrote that episode, uh, and there's all this phenomenally great action and
Mhm.
with screaming pumpkin bombs and hundreds and hundreds of screaming pumpkin bombs.
I love that. And more
and
Shakespeare too. How often
and
are you gonna see that in a kid's cartoon, quote unquote?
yeah, so it was.
Yeah.
I do think those last two episodes, just you know, we went out on our. I mean, again, not like we knew when we made them that they were gonna be our last ever. We thought we'd get a pickup for season 3 back then, but I do feel good that we went out on a real high. That those last couple episodes really were something
It was
special.
called Final Curtain. So
Opening
yeah.
night, and then final curtain.
Yeah, I would say for me, since you want to go last, Dick, just the way they wrapped up in those last two episodes in season 2 was really like just clever and all that parallel storytelling. That's advanced, you know, stuff you were doing there, and the action was great. The animation was really good, and then the last couple seasons of season 1, I also felt was just a great wrap up of um,
Then
Venom and his storyline with Peter and the way Peter kind of has to dig deep to kind of come out of it was just beautifully told. And I think Vic, I think you directed both the last episode of season 1 and 2.
I didn't
Um,
want to
are you going to make those your
like
favorite
that. I don't want
episodes?
to but yeah. So yeah, Final Curtain's one of my favorites as well.
Mhm.
Oh my God, I don't know how even the animation studio survived working on that episode. So much, all
Yeah,
those pumpkin heads, the henchmen too. Oh my
yeah.
God, everything. Um, this may sound unusual. I mentioned this episode already, but Uncertainty Principle is just one
Yes,
of my overall favorites.
that's cool.
The mix of humor, the action, the animation.
Yeah.
I feel like that and Natural Selection, it's like in terms of the animation style and look and the movement is
Hmm.
those are the whole episode really nails it. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
That's the
really nice to
Wizard
see when the
episode, right?
overseas studio really kind of nailed
yeah.
Sean's, design in
In the
terms of
in the
animation.
swash and stretch.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
fight
yeah.
scene in the park wasn't by that studio. That's
Mhm,
one of my favorite fights.
mhm.
The in the season 1 finale, the prologue was an extension of the Comic-Con trailer we first did, the rooftop fight with Spider-Man versus these thugs that are
Mm.
trying to
Yeah,
seize
that was great.
helicopter. It's a
Mhm.
fantastic fight, so
Yes.
well animated. It's just all I don't think there's any dialogue in that. It's just all action. Um, so, but like Greg, I like them all. You know.
That's great. All right, guys. It was so fun catching up with you guys and looking back on that 2000. I myself, dude, despite all the pain we went through in our professional lives and even my personal life during that time, I still just there's just yeah something about it. I just even the cartoons, a simple 2D approach, not simple in its execution by any means, but just I
I
think it
love this.
holds up, man. It's still a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed going back and refreshing my memory and rewatching the series. I would
Yeah.
encourage anybody out there, certainly the people that grew up on it, are dedicated fans. I would say it's still great. It's still a great thing to show your kid. It's still like as
Is it still
comp-
on Disney XD? Does anyone
it
know?
is not. And I looked like I went through they have the Spider-Man is Amazing Friends, they have the 67 Spider-Man, they have all the Spider-Mans, but they do not have and I wonder if that maybe that has something to do with Sony. I don't
We were
know.
on there for a while though.
We were, yeah.
Oh, you were. Yeah,
Oh,
you weren't on there now. So I have the DVD collection. But it was only of the first season. It had some extras on there, and then I just had to purchase the other ones on YouTube.
yeah.
So that's what I would encourage people to do. I think we live in an age where like it's an incredible age for animation in many ways, and the ambition has only grown, and the tools we have now, computer animation, it's just it's amazing what we have to watch. But I would say, um, what you guys did is it's simple, but so is a Peanuts cartoon, and it's still great. So it's like I think it's definitely worth going back and checking out.
Thank you.
Right on. Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you. It's good seeing you guys.
Thanks a lot. This is
All right,
fun.
all right, everybody. True believers. Till next time. Good to see
Take
you.
care. Bye.